going to call the meeting to order. First item of business, citizens communication. I don't see any, so we will move on to item 3A, which is approval of the minutes of February 10th, 2025.
Do I make a motion to approve? Sorry. I don't see anything wrong with them.
Yeah, that's I'll second it,
Okay.
right? All in favor? Aye. Aye, all right, minutes approved, thank you. Item 4A, discuss and consider action to elect officers.
Okay, so you'll be electing chair and vice chair. The duties of the chair are to open and close the meetings and make sure that we stay on track with the agenda. Vice chair steps in for the chair if they're absent. So, does anybody want to nominate somebody for chair?
Can I nominate myself for chair?
Sure,
Awesome. Can I second his nomination?
you can.
Awesome. Any discussion? All in favor for Corey Wolin Douglas as chair?
Aye.
Aye? All right.
Cool.
Do we have a motion to elect somebody for vice chair?
I'm happy to do it again unless Dr. Miller, you're, okay. I will self-nominate, and it was already on my name tag
Yeah, see, look.
somehow, so I didn't think it
Oh, I'm sorry.
was meant to be.
No, it's meant to be.
So I nominate myself as vice chair.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. I'm vice chair.
All right, so Corey, you will be taking the reins for the meeting from here out.
Okay. From right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
That's all right.
So 4B is to discuss and consider action regarding the 2004 listening session report. Brianna Higgins, Special Project Manager.
Thank you. No, go to the podium.
All right, good evening, Equity Commission. Last time we discussed, sorry, just moving the microphone, didn't want to mess it up. Good? Okay. Last time we were talking about the 2025 listening sessions and topics for those sessions. A conversation came up about topics that were discussed during last year's listening sessions 2024, and maybe not doing those as listening session topics for 2025, but still exploring ways that we can explore those topics. So what I've done is I've taken the recommended actions from the listening report that we assigned to the Equity Commission that we felt aligned with the Equity Commission's goals as well as Council's goals, and then pulled from the listening session report in notes topics that came up. These are very general topics, so you might read it and be like, well, we also talked about this thing. It might fall under an umbrella, and I'll go over that. Just so we have it kind of side by side of recommended actions for the commission and then topics. So that's why it's all on one slide. Typically, I don't like this many words on a slide, but I wanted to make sure it was easy to read. So some of the recommended actions, this is also not verbatim from the report. I had to summarize it a little bit just so all of those words would fit and they were readable. But those recommended actions were maintaining open channels for resident input on commission activities and community needs, hosting meetings for community discussions, which lends into that our listening tour, gathering input on initiatives to understand community needs, share local service information via flyers, community boards, advocate for residents' concerns, and then, so that was in general some of the things that came up. When we talk about the listening sessions, that covers a lot of that, but may not cover everything. And then the topics discussed last year were safety and public services, historical and cultural preservation. Just as a reminder, some of that conversation was about like the different cemeteries, the history of Pflugerville. We do have the Heritage House Museum, but kind of sharing that out more. Youth engagement and education, communication, that covers communicating to the public, but also receiving communications from the public. access to resources being food resources, mobility resources, education resources, housing resources. That covers all the gambit of resources. Mental health, access to education, not just education for the school district, but education of things like what resources are out there. What does it mean to be in the ETJ? Just access to education in general. Community identity and growth. A lot of conversations surrounded the things that we love about Pflugerville: trails, parks, the library, our small town feel but growing city. Mobility access, so access to transportation, trails, things like that. The ETJ, what does it mean to be in the ETJ? What is an ETJ? Who are ETJ residents? And then supporting local businesses, and then our local community. So those are some of the common topics that were discussed. Not on this slide are the actions that we've assigned to our different departments. I've covered those earlier on in the year at a high overview, just to give you some ideas of what's been going on since we've met, and that might touch on some of these topics. Corey and Claudia, you know we've kicked off our strategic plan, and we had, because you were there, we had our strategic plan think tank workshop last week, which covered, some of the conversations covered a lot of these topics at a very high overview. We'll continue our strategic plan process. We'll have more opportunities for public engagement later in April, or beginning of April, and then later in April as well. And we'll also have a survey come out, and that will probably touch on a lot of these topics as well. Our planning and development services, as well as police department, have put together, are putting together meetings with neighborhood leaders, like HOA leaders and community leaders, so that they can get out information, which we also heard during the listening sessions as well. We are currently doing our mobility master plan, which will touch on mobility access and access to resources. We are also going through our budget season, which will, some of these conversations will be brought into, and our strategic plan and community engagement also informs that as well. Anything else I'm missing, Emily, on public engagement right now? Okay. And then coming up will be our listening sessions. So those are the broad overview to that. Last time there was a conversation about mental health and doing something around that, but we also said that we'd bring back other topics that were discussed. At this time, kind of what we discussed last time was possibly a workshop on mental health. I don't know where you want that conversation to go from here. If you want to simmer on it and we can bring this back again, we can do that as well if you're not in that mindset to discuss.
Would that be in relation to the listening tour? Is it part of the listening tour? Or is it this would be a different session, kind of fully for mental health?
So based on our conversation last time, my understanding is that it was felt that maybe the mental health conversation wasn't a listening session topic, but we still wanted to explore doing something with mental health. And that could be, we do a workshop with a mental health professional open to the community. It could be that we explore sharing out resources, things like that. That's where that conversation led, was something separate from the listening sessions, but doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still very much of the mindset. I'd like to see some traction, some progress, something on that front. Just based on things happening in our community or around our community. I think it's important to put some information out there that people might not know about. Recently, I shared on one of our neighborhood pages in Pflugerville, I think it's called the 988 Lifeline, which is 24/7, 365. You can text, you can call, you can talk to someone if you're in a crisis. And I got some thank yous, this is really important information. So just even if we could do a social media push, or maybe it is a workshop, I don't have the solution, but.
Yeah, I like the idea of resources,
Yeah.
because it's hard to get people to talk about mental health in kind of a group setting.
Yeah.
It's kind of private to them, and it's very closely held. So, can we get some resources out in the community and just make them aware of what we have as a city? And then maybe we can breach the topic like later on about mental health, like maybe in a survey or something more private, where it doesn't like, people don't have to get up and actually express themselves in front of others, you know?
Okay. So maybe something like a social post that shares out what resources are out there.
When is World Mental Health Day? Is it coming up? Whenever that is, that would be a good,
That's,
yeah, like there could be some natural times.
Mental Health Day?
I mean, I'd hate to hold on to information if we have it and we can get it out there. Because that one in particular, the 988 Lifeline, like the fact that you can access it via text, and you know, like young people especially, nobody wants to talk to anybody anymore in person or on the phone sometimes, so just having something accessible via text could
It's
be like
October 10th.
October, yeah, so I thought it might be way out there.
and it might be something interesting to like have themes to it, like transportation, food services, different things. Not so we don't just overwhelm them with like huge lists of resources. Kind of make it maybe 1 month we focus on food resources, 1 month we focus on something else, like from a comms standpoint. Just to kind of spread it out a little bit and make sure people are actually digesting that information.
So I will have to go with our communications department and explore this topic with them.
Okay.
I don't know their
Yeah.
like communications policy, but I certainly think at the bare minimum we can share something out, right? So, okay. Anything else on this?
No.
Okay, that concludes 4B.
Okay. 4C, discuss and consider action regarding the 2005 listening session and plan locations, times, and logistics.
Okay, so last month we got together and we had a really productive meeting. We discussed a whole bunch of stuff about the 2025 listening sessions. This was the slide I left you with from March. It was to review the planning document. I sent out an updated planning document to the commission, and I also have it printed all for you as well that incorporated a lot of our notes from last time. To work on your location, date, and times for the month that you selected. To prepare to invite neighbors in the community to these sessions. To identify which month you would like to plan if you didn't. And then to come back with questions, and that is questions for your session. So I'm going to keep showing the timeline just to keep it fresh in our minds. Right now we're in that planning, locations, times, and logistics phase. April, everything needs to be final. So if you don't have answers to some of these items I'll ask you about today, you will need to have answers in April. If you do not have answers for like finalization, the next time we meet, we are going to have to skip that session so that we can get these pushed out in April and have people actually attending beginning May. And then in May through September, we'll host those listening tour sessions. October, we'll summarize findings. And then in November, those findings will be presented to this commission. And November, December, to council, depending on how that falls in the meeting timeline. So last session, we all got together and we talked about topics as well as kind of people discuss which months they would take. I haven't received any emails from anyone finalizing anything. So the ones that are italicized with the asterisks, that's kind of, everyone's like tentatively, this is what I'm looking at. Corey, you selected June, so you are set for June. And then your session topic was economic equity. If you look at the packet I provided you, you will see on page 6, I think, topic ideas listed. So that's from the notes that we discussed. I prettified them so that way you didn't have to look at my terrible handwriting. And these were the topics that we discussed, and then some of the topics that the commissioners selected. The topics we talked about were economic equity. Corey said he'd like to facilitate that one. Accessibility and barriers to accessibility, Clarissa said she would take. Skill building and lifelong learning, Claudia would take. Government transparency and accountability did not have anyone identified. And then community needs and challenges, Clarissa and Omani said that they would facilitate those together. And then we had some alternative topics that I left on the list just because they were still part of that conversation and you wanted us to bring them up just in case. you sat on it and maybe you thought about something else. And those were historic preservation and cultural heritage, as well as mental health awareness and support. Our conversation leads me to saying mental health awareness support can be taken off of this as a listening session topic. And so that conversation, we said we'd come back in March and see if anyone had finalized anything. So I'm going to be the one to ask. And I know, Dr. Miller, you did not get to be a part of that conversation. So your insight, if there is a month that you would like to host a session for, or a topic you'd like to host, to have as well, that is also an option. So I'll let y'all, did anyone finalize anything yet?
I have questions.
You got questions?
Yeah, I got-
Great,
got
okay,
questions.
I'm still working on mine,
okay,
not final.
got it. Well, I also know we're missing some of our commissioners, so I'll make sure that a follow-up email when I send all my notes out, that we also, I'll kind of ping, if you finalize things as you go, please let me know. This is in your packet. What's on the screen right now is in your packet. I've also provided you all a question sheet. Corey, you don't even need this one. We can recycle it. But just to help, because I know sometimes we have conversations, we leave, things happen, we all have different busy lives. This question sheet is just to help you. You don't have to fill it out if you have your separate document or you're using a napkin or whatever, however you track your notes. But just to help, it has your topic, who's facilitating, and then a section for questions. I felt if you took this, it might help you kind of take notes or figure it out or remember what it was that the homework was. So that's for your questions. And speaking of questions, we talked about a survey for next year. Similar to how last year's sessions were, we hosted the sessions, and then after all the sessions, we put out a survey. Some of the feedback we received was maybe we put out the survey when we share out when the topics are. But a lot of the conversation held to the topics have different sessions, and we don't want to send out 20 different surveys, because then we'll have survey fatigue, because we have a survey coming out for our strategic plan. We also have a survey coming out for the community feedback report that we do. So you asked me to explore what if we put it all in one survey. So I told you I'd come back with like a mock-up. Please note, this is not a scientific survey. The questions I put in here, this is just, oh, I didn't know I'd have to do this. I should have tested it out better. This is the mock-up survey I put together and giving you some options to see if you like this or not. So when someone accesses the survey, we're going to ask, we'll give them a little brief overview, not exactly this, but just kind of.
Was it supposed to change?
Oh, yeah, it is. Sorry. I know how to use a computer. There we go. I was like, why are y'all looking at me? So it'll have a brief little introduction, not this exact one. Again, this was just a quick mock-up. We would ask these questions of what part of the city do you live in? Please select the gender you identify with most. Please select the races you identify with the most, your age range. And then you have a couple options here. We can either have it where when they hit next, it takes them to questions on economic equity. Or we can ask them to select what questions they want to answer first. So let's say they want to answer accessibility and barriers to accessibility. That's the questions they want. That's the topic they want to answer questions about. It'll take them to that section, and they can answer just those questions. We'd ask them questions. Here's your example. Yes. And then here are two other options I came up with. Your first option is if they'd like to explore other questions from the other topics, now's their opportunity to, so they could click they want to answer the economic equity questions. Okay, technically it's supposed to take them back to economic equity. I didn't set that up right. Or we could have it ask them, would you like to go to the next set of questions? And it could take them to the next set and just continue. If they select no on either of these, it would take them to the end of the survey. And they wouldn't even have to deal with scrolling through all those other questions or looking at them if they didn't want to.
Is there, can you go back to the, all the way down, the bottom? When it actually asks, do you want to answer more questions? Could that like come first? It's a yes or no question, and then ask them which questions they want? Like, does that
Yeah.
make sense?
I can have it go to that.
Because if they say, I don't want to answer questions, and then they say, yes, I want to answer questions, it's like, it's going to be a little confusing. Like,
Oh, so that was an either or option.
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay, it's either
So
or. Okay.
it's either we could ask them, do you want to go to the next set? Or they would answer question 6, and then question 7 would be,
I
what
gotcha.
topic would you like to answer?
Okay.
And then they could say none of the above, and it would take them to the end.
Mhm.
So either question 7 or question 8.
okay.
I can do both as well if you wanted me to, but to your point, to prevent confusion, it would be either or.
I mean, I don't know if you guys see the purpose for 7 if we have 8, because 8's just so much more, there's so much more there that they can actually choose from, so.
Yeah, I think one less question would be
Yeah,
better.
just one less question.
And my thought on the first page, like, is I take it it's not possible for them to select more than one just from the very beginning?
Yeah, so yeah, I wouldn't be able to get them to all of those different sections. There isn't an option within, I was exploring that. If the way it's set up, the logic function, whatever they select, it'll take them to that section. But what
So
I
you
would
have to do it a step at a time.
yeah. I tried to see if that was an option because that would make it so much easier to just populate all of them, but it wasn't an ability. So for example, on this one, economic equity, what I would do is when I set it up, you'll see on question 8, economic equity isn't an option because they've already answered those questions in this section. So if they moved on from economic equity to accessibility and barriers to accessibility, it would be, then when you look at this question, that's gone.
Yeah. I wonder if it's, I mean, maybe it's just me, I'm a purist about this, but like, would we consider saying, like, please select which topic you'd like to begin answering questions first?
Yeah, I can
Like,
word it to
just
that.
to make it clear, like,
that.
you're gonna
Yeah.
get another chance to make more selections.
It kind of leaves it open.
It
for
kind of
them.
leaves it open, letting them know, like, you're starting with the first set by checking one of these. It's not the end of you being able to indicate you want to answer more.
So you like in the beginning that they have to pick what set of questions, that it doesn't automatically push them to equity.
Well,
Because if they didn't answer question 8 and they just hit next, so how I would set it up is I would make question 8, you have to answer it.
yeah,
An option you have is there isn't a question 8, there isn't a question 7, they do the demographics and they hit next and it's economic equity. Like that's where they start and then they can pick, or we can have the pick in the beginning. It's very flexible, it's what you want. I lean towards having 8 because maybe they don't want
yeah,
to
I
answer
think
that.
8 is fine. I was more thinking the first page.
The verbiage.
Like making it clear that when you're selecting something here, you're just selecting your first set of questions.
Yeah, where would you like to begin?
Yeah,
And I think just to be sure, for question 8, let's say they go to economic equality, then they go to accessibility. On the next one, they go to skill building, let's say. But is accessibility and economic equality like an option? So it might get a little confusing. Just I don't know how we can.
Dude, we can.
Okay, yeah.
Because if you started with skill building,
Mhm.
once you get to skill building, if you didn't do economic equity, you'd want to go to economic
okay.
equity. It's not customizable to the person. It's just a standard
Okay,
survey form.
just making sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is you like the branching. They get to pick where they start. After they answer your questions, they get to decide if they want to move on to whatever topic, or they can just end the survey there and be done. Okay. Now they can also, like, let's say they do the survey on economic equity. They decide, you know what, a week later, they actually want to answer questions about community needs and challenges. They can go back and answer those. Like, it's not a one-time, they could go back and answer it.
Do they log in for this, or do they
No.
give any information? Just the demographic information.
Just demographic information, and it's all optional.
Mhm.
So if they didn't want to provide it, they do not have to.
Okay.
The only question I will make mandatory is on the first page, please select which topic you would like to answer. Or where would you like to begin? so that it forces them to go somewhere.
To start the survey.
Yeah.
And this is like, this will work on mobile and stuff? I
Yes.
know I've done these before, but I just don't remember.
So this is the mobile, let me start at the first page. This is the mobile preview.
Cool.
And then when you hit,
And just one more thing to make it easy on us when we're reviewing the information. When we say like what neighborhood you live in, or I forgot what that first question is, there could be a drop down, but I don't want to like pigeonhole everybody. I know that you're going to get some interesting things.
so yeah, so we actually just explored this with our strategic plan survey. We have a ton of neighborhoods and not
Yeah.
everyone knows exactly the name of their neighborhood.
Okay.
So what we did with the strategic plan survey is we created a whole map and they had to pick like their district. We know that's not something everyone's familiar with. For this, we also on the strategic plan survey allow them the opportunity to self-identify in case like, well, I don't live in this district, I live in, I don't know,
Yeah.
Bluebonnet Preserve, right? Like some apartment complex. So I wouldn't be able to do a drop down because of how many there are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I can explore using that same map that we created for the strategic plan and see if I can do it based off the districts.
Yeah, if it works in SurveyMonkey, I suppose.
Okay.
But yeah, I just don't want you guys to get a bunch of like random.
Oh, yeah.
Open text boxes can be very fun in surveys.
So I guess another question that came to mind in SurveyMonkey, like, can the end user, like, change their language to what they see, what language they see it in, or no?
I don't have an answer, but I'll get one.
And then when we are developing these questions, so that we would have the listening tour questions, and then we would have kind of these that would be survey oriented, right? Because I guess the listening tour is a little bit more open ended. So you'd want some more qualitative data, I'm supposing, from the survey itself. So do we need to make two sets of questions, or?
My recommendation was that your questions you asked during your session were easily translatable
Okay.
to a survey, just so that you were kind of asking the same question. But if you have a question on there that you're like, this is not a good survey question, it's not going to get any type of great response, if you want to create an alternative, we can do that.
Yeah, mine are kind of open ended, so.
Anything else? Okay. So as you send your questions and provide those to me, I'll get them into the survey as well. So that way, as you know, in April when we get together, I can show you more of a complete survey. And you can kind of see, maybe you'll look at all the questions and be like, oh, these questions are similar. We can ask, like, let's keep them there or change them up or however you want to do it. Something might spark your creativity. But I do recommend in April that you have your questions solidified, just so that way when we are pushing out the sessions and pushing out the survey with the sessions, it's all together and we're not waiting for June to have June topic questions.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have this filled in yet. I realized I could have put Corey's name on June. But as we finalize it, we'll have this really pretty picture of who has what month. So thinking about April, review the planning document. I'll always say that. Get familiar with it. It's a live document. I'll keep updating it, adding it. This time, I had what I feel like is a great idea, really for myself, and I didn't even use it, as you can see, is a notes page. That was new, and I didn't use it, and that's why I did it. Work on your location, date, and times for your selected month. You'll see in the planning document, the page that has the topic idea, also as a reminder, has city facilities that can be an option but aren't guaranteed to be an option. So if you pick a date and a time and you're super struggling with a location, you can reach out to me and I can help, but I can't promise you that we'll have a city facility available at that time. They are booking up quickly. And then if you do need assistance, please reach out. We're happy to help, but we want you to be able to take a stab at it first. Finalize your questions, and then prepare to invite neighbors and the community to these listening sessions. I also share with you, kind of a lesson we learned with our strategic plan community engagement is I have an entire list of people that did PF 101 that I've never thought of to email and invite. And I did it for the strategic plan workshop, and nearly all of those attendees were PF, not everyone, but I have to say at least 75% of them had done PF 101. So when it comes to these community listening sessions, you can know that I will be emailing them as well and inviting them to attend a community listening session, because now we know that's a resource, and it's actually a resource where people are responsive. We'll also be working on kind of like a little invite image where you could email it to people that you know in your community, your connections, and send them an email as well that just makes them feel like they were invited to the sessions. We talked about incentives at the last session. It was an idea that Omani brought up. What we'll do is prepare to bring some of the city swag we have to those sessions so that when people attend, they can leave with something Pflugerville-esque. We're exploring some other ideas, but we don't have anything solid right now, so I don't want to get your hopes up on something that I can't promise will happen, but we are still exploring what other possibilities are out there. That concludes what I had prepared.
I have one more question.
Absolutely.
For questions, what would you recommend the number of questions be for the listening tour and then for the survey? I suppose there'd be matching, but how many questions in total? I have 10, but
Yeah, so I think something we learned from from last year is people will talk on a question. And that's great. That was the whole point. We had 8 questions prepared, and I can only speak from what I saw, but what I saw during that was as we got to like the middle of those questions, there kind of a panic began to set in of, oh gosh, we're not going to get through all these questions. And then we started to rush towards the end, and that felt kind of, I'm sure those who were a part of the session had no idea, but maybe for the facilitators or as a note taker, I was like, okay, are we going to get through all of these? Or we might skip a question here and there. So I recommend 5, because last year we had 8, and that seemed compact. Or you could have, come prepared with as many questions as you want, but pick your top 5. And then if you feel like you have a lot of time left, you can go to 6 or 7. For the survey, I would limit it to 5 just to prevent survey fatigue. If they decide that they want to go through all of the different topics, 5, 10, 8, it's going to they might not continue, even if they intended to. So I would say 5, but if you have 6 and you're like, I love this 6th one, I'm not going to say no.
I think I'll prepare 5 and then have an overflow just in
Yeah.
case the conversation doesn't fill the entire time. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Bless you. Any other questions? Okay, so April, we're going to come with finalized location, finalized dates, finalized times, finalized questions. If you have them and you want to email them to me ahead of time, because let's say something happens and you don't think you're going to make it to the meeting, please do that. My deadline is our next Equity Commission meeting. I might give you to that Friday, depending on where we are, but I'm going to say very hard deadline for that next Equity Commission meeting. And then we can talk about it as a group. Okay, you have this. I'll give you a digital copy as well. And if you have any questions, please let us know. But that concludes what I have prepared.
Okay. I don't know how to close the meeting, so. Hi. Oh, we're adjourned.